O God, this is a broken-winged bird, and his flight is very slow. Assist him so that he may fly toward the apex of prosperity and salvation. Wing his way with the utmost joy and happiness throughout the illimitable space. Raise his melody in thy supreme name in all the regions. Exhilarate the ears with this call, and brighten the eyes by beholding the signs of guidance. O Lord, I am single, alone, and lowly. For me there is no support save thee, no helper except thee, and no sustainer beside thee. Confirm me in thy service, assist me with the cohorts of thy angels, and make me victorious in the promotion of thy word, and suffer me to speak out thy wisdom amongst thy creatures. Verily thou art the helper of the weak and the defender of the little ones. And verily thou art the powerful, the mighty, and the unconstrained.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to welcome Sheila Banani, Knight of Baha'u'llah for Greece, and a wonderful soul I have known for well nigh 50 years now. And a little bit about Sheila. Sheila's parents were also believers, and Sheila's father, Charles Walcott, was elected to the International Baha'i Council in 1961. And so he and her mom moved to the Holy Land 5 years after the pilgrimage Sheila will be talking about. And then in 1963, her father, seen on the left in this portrait of the House of Justice, her father was elected to the Universal House of Justice in 1963. Sheila and her husband, Amin, pioneered to Greece in 1953 and were named by the Guardian Knights of Baha'u'llah. And give me just a moment, please. I am not sure. Oh, let's see. Okay. Now we'll try it again. In 1956, Sheila went on pilgrimage and lived on the second floor of this building, number 10 Haparsim, the Western Pilgrim House. And then Sheila, you had dinner with Shoghi Effendi 7 times during your pilgrimage.
Yes.
And you'll be sharing with us your pilgrimage experiences and what the Guardian said to you. So let's start there. You are upstairs that first evening on the second floor of the Western Pilgrim House, and you are called downstairs to this room where your dinners were with Shoghi Effendi. Welcome, and please begin.
Thank you so much, Brent, for inviting me to share some portions of what happened when I went on pilgrimage. Now, I have to tell you that this was 64 years ago, this year now, 64 years since I'm recalling my memories. So it was an interesting opportunity for me to look over my pilgrim notes. And of course, I had to look over them many times, and I realized that, well, you probably don't want to hear my pilgrim notes. You want to hear portions of uh, of those experiences in those days of 1956. So I'll try to do that, but I beg your pardon if I have to occasionally try to find a reference in my Pilgrim notes to be sure what I'm saying is accurate
Of course.
and not rely totally on my memory. You know, in those days, in 1956, as those who wished to have pilgrimage, all of us had to write to Shoghi Effendi and ask for pilgrimage and then wait to hear when we would be scheduled. So we didn't know. Sometimes we didn't know exactly what the date would be. And as it turned out, because my husband Amin and I and our baby daughter Suzanne had been pioneering in Greece, and my husband's job, he was teaching, required that he not take time off except during a time that was a natural break in the school's schedule. So, and we didn't want to leave our pioneering post empty. So my husband went on pilgrimage in December 1955, and I remained in Greece with our baby daughter while he had pilgrimage. And being Persian, he was amongst what Shoghi Effendi referred to as the Eastern pilgrims, that is, those who could speak Persian and Arabic. And so he was housed with the Eastern pilgrims. I was given the schedule to come to Haifa on pilgrimage at Rezvan time in 1956, just 4 months after Amin's pilgrimage. And much to my delight and surprise, I was the only Western pilgrim to be invited at that time, or perhaps there were others and they couldn't go. I don't know. All I know is that I found myself in Haifa on April 27th, 1956, as the only Western pilgrim and housed in what was then known as the Western Pilgrim House. Of course, we could speak English. And it was lucky for me because my Persian wasn't very good anyway. So I'm explaining all of this so that you can see that why was I there without the rest of my family? So my husband was taking care of our child, and his mother came from Africa. Amin's mother and father were pioneering in Uganda, and Amin's father is hand of the cause Musa Banani, and Amin's mother Samihe Banani, and their son-in-law Ali Naqshbandi with their daughter Violette Naqshbandi and their child Bahie Naqshbandi. They were all pioneering in Africa and Uganda. And Amin's mother Samihe came to Athens to stay and help take care of our child, Suzanne, while I was on pilgrimage. So now let's go back to that day that I arrived. And actually, it was a morning time. It was on April 27th in the morning. And I arrived at the airport, flying only 3 hours from Athens to Tel Aviv. And in those days, they didn't have the train as they now have. For those of you who have gone on pilgrimage recently, you know there's a train from the airport to Haifa. That's unbelievable. In my day, in 1956, we took what is known as a shirut, or a communal taxi, and drove through desert and orange groves and camels, and was definitely rural area along the coast to arrive in Haifa in the morning of April 27th. And I was greeted at that building that Brent showed on the screen that's referred to as the Western Pilgrim House in those days, its address being number 10 Persian Street. In the morning, the door opened and it was Ethel, I believe, who met me at the door, Ethel Ravel. The Ravel sisters, Ethel and Jessie Ravel, called by the Guardian to serve in Haifa. And I was welcomed into the Pilgrim House at number 10. Since it was morning, I was invited to come and have breakfast. And very informally, I knew some of these people that I'm going to mention by name and probably continue to refer to them by first names. And please don't think it is impolite. I was 23 years old at that time. And at the age of 23, everybody else I was meeting was much older than I. But if I address them as the individuals I knew before coming to Haifa with their first names, it's because I did know them. So that day, before I even met Shoghi Effendi, that morning, I was able to see and talk with Amelia Collins, Hand of the Cause, and the Ravel sisters, and Leroy Ios and his wife Sylvia Ios. Leroy is a Hand of the Cause. And we went up to the Shrine of the Bob, and I was allowed to go in there and say prayers, which was a special, beautiful, moving, as all of you who have had the opportunity for pilgrimage know, that the first time you go into the Shrine of the Bob is an exquisite and unique experience. All times that you're able to do that is an important experience in our spiritual life. I think the first time is extraordinarily special. And we walked around as well on the mountain, seeing the construction, ongoing construction of the archives building. Archives building was to have 50 columns up. And at that time it had 36. So it was, as you know, still under construction in 1956. I haven't gotten to the dinner with the Guardian yet. This is still the first day, the first morning, first afternoon of pilgrimage. And then without referring to my notes, I'm going to just skip ahead a little bit and tell you that in the afternoon, I was invited to come to the Master's house, which is number 7 Persian Street. It's across the street from the Western Pilgrim House. And number 7 Aparsim, was the home in which Shoghi Effendi and Ruhi Khanum lived now, because of course, Abdul Baha having passed away in 1921, this became the home of Shoghi Effendi. And when he married Ruhi Khanum in 1937, which, as you can see, was about 19 years before I was able to go to be in those places and see those individuals. I had actually met Ruhia Khanum when she came to United States for the dedication of House of Worship in Wilmette, and that dedication took place in 1953. And for any of you who may have been in Illinois and Wilmette, Illinois, for the dedication of the House of Worship, it was also an international conference, I should say, not held at the same during that same period. So I had met Ruhi Khanum. Now I was in her home, Shoghi Effendi's home, having tea with her in the tea room of the master's house. Then it came to be evening, and this was going to be my first meeting with Shoghi Effendi on the first day of April 27th. We assembled, those of us that I've mentioned, along with some other individuals I will mention by name. We assembled in the drawing room on that, what I call the first floor, not the lower floor of the dining room, but the first floor of number 10 Persian Street, Western Pilgrim House. We assembled around 7 o'clock, I think it was, in the evening, and it had grown dark. So the lights were lighted on the shrine of the Bab, and we could look out the window of that drawing room and see the shrine of the Bab lighted. It was exquisite, beautiful. Now, of course, it's really lighted. But in those days, it was the only point of light on the mountain because there was no construction nearby. And it was a beautiful sight. And then the maid came and said, quickly come downstairs to the dining room. Dining room was down on the lower level because she said, Shoghi Effendi and Ruhi Khanum are waiting for you. So in company with Hand of the Cause Leroy Iowas and his wife Sylvia, and I don't remember if Millie Collins was with us or whether she was already downstairs. The Ravel sisters, I mentioned to you, Jessie and Ethel, and Dr. Lotfullah Hakim, who was also there as not a hand of the cause, I don't think, but he was helping. Perhaps he was, I don't know. Brent, you'll have to check my accuracy.
He was elected to the House at the same time as your father.
Yes, but this was before the House was elected, so he may have been there called by Shoghi Effendi. And I don't remember if he was on the International Baha'i Council, which Shoghi Effendi appointed. He may have been there for that reason, because I think had there been more pilgrims instead of just me, that fewer of the Hands of the Cause or members of the International Baha'i Council would have come to the dinner. As it turned out, since I was the only pilgrim, they were all included in the dinners. So there were like 11, I think I counted at one time, 11 people seated around the table. Anyway, let me go back to the going downstairs part. Now, this was going to be my first meeting with Shoghi Effendi. And in anticipation of this meeting, of course, I had no idea of what was going to happen. And I have to tell you that it was so moving to me, this experience, because I had no prior discussion, even with my husband, about his meeting with Shoghi Effendi, which is so very different than this. I mean, he met with the Persian men, Baha'i men, when he was on pilgrimage with Shoghi Effendi. And it was not a sit-down dinner conversation with Shoghi Effendi, with the Persian men. So his experience was entirely different from mine. though he couldn't prepare me for anything. I entered the dining room, which is a very small room with a large oval table, dining room table with the chairs seated around it. Shoghi Effendi was standing, and he shook my hand and he warmly welcomed me. He said, "You've waited a long time. Welcome." And he immediately asked, "And how is Amin?" So friendly, so as if we had met before, although we had never met before. I felt immediately warmly invited into the room. Ruhi Khanum was standing to Shoghi Effendi's right, and we had already met that day. Of course, I had met her before that day. But I had been with her for tea. And Shoghi Effendi then asked me to sit at the head of the table. He's, as I recall, I mean, this was such an extraordinary experience for me that I was trying to remember every element of it. But after 64 years, I'm not sure that I get everything absolutely correctly in the timeline that it occurred. But this is my memory now. He invited me to be seated next to him on his left, and he indicated that that was a seat of honor and that I was being given that seat because I was a knight of Baha'u'llah. So in his view, as he expressed it to me, this was how he viewed me. Now, I was, as I told you, I was 23 years old, young, and he was, in my sight, an older person, but by no means elderly, as you might think of that as a frail person. No, he was quite vigorous, but he was 59 years old at that age, which to me now, I'm going to be 88 in a couple of weeks. And I think right now that a 59-year-old man is a very young person. But from my perspective at that time, I was looking at him as uniquely Shoghi Effendi, and of course, an older, respectable, respected, revered individual. And he lacked the formality that one might assume he could have exercised as guardian with one of his Baha'i followers, and yet he was anything but formal or reserved. He was not casual, but he was warm and friendly. So I sat in that place that Shoghi Effendi asked me to sit. That was the place he indicated I should sit every night at dinner together. So I took it, that was not just going to be a one-time opportunity, but it would be followed every night that we had dinner together in that fashion. Now I'm going to tell you about around the table for just a minute so that you get the picture. To my right, of course, was Shoghi Effendi. Next to him was Ruhi Khanum seated. And then I believe Dr. Lutfullah Hakim was seated next to her. And then the two Ravel sisters, Essie and Jessie Ravel from Philadelphia, they were acting like secretaries to assist Shoghi Effendi, I know. Then Amelia Collins, Hand of the Cause, Sylvia Iwas, Leroy Iwas, and Mason Remy. So Mason Remy was on my left and Shoghi Effendi was on my right. And Mason Remy and Shoghi Effendi were across from each other at the table. So, you know, if Mason Remy looked up, he would be looking straight ahead at Shoghi Effendi. In that small dining room, there was an easel set up. It would be to Shoghi Effendi's left, to my right. And on the easel was a drawing made by Mason Remy of the